He's been called the grandfather of Latin American revolutionaries. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be learning more about the life of Fidel Castro.
Los revolucionarios somos y seremos siempre optimistas. Tampoco nos dejaremos intimidar.
Fidel Alejandro Castro Cruz was born August 13, 1926, near Buran, Cuba, to a wealthy sugarcane farmer and a member of his household staff. As a University of Havana law student in the 1940s, Castro became interested in politics. He started to believe in anti-imperialism and that American influence harmed the Cuban government. After witnessing violence against student protesters, Castro began advocating for social justice and joined the socialist organization Partido Ortodoxo. While publicly critiquing Cuba's social and economic inequalities, Castro revealed his particularly leftist point of view. He soon aligned himself with Marxist ideas, including the theory that only a working-class revolution would incite political change. After graduation, Castro campaigned for a Cuban parliamentary seat. However, those elections were canceled when General Fulgencio Batista staged a military coup in 1952 and seized power. Many Cubans considered Batista's regime a dictatorship, and Castro unsuccessfully attempted to legally remove him. In 1953, he and several dissidents attacked the Moncada military barracks as part of a group called the Movement. This botched attempt resulted in Castro's arrest and a 15-year prison sentence, but it also exposed the ruthless methods of Batista's army and government to other Cubans. While imprisoned, Castro developed what became known as the 26th of July movement with fellow jailed supporters and outside activists. In 1955, he and the other prisoners were released in a politically based amnesty. Shortly thereafter, Castro met Argentine Marxist revolutionary Ernesto Che Guevara in Mexico, and he joined the cause. In 1956, they returned to Cuba with a group of armed radicals. Though most were executed or taken prisoner, Castro, his brother Raúl, Guevara, and a few others eluded Batista's guards. The survivors convened at the Sierra Maestra mountain range and spent 2 years building a rebel army. Castro and his forces then executed guerrilla attacks on Batista's men. The Cuban Revolution grew across the country, as did international disapproval of Batista's regime. Batista resigned at the end of 1958, and Castro was considered a hero upon his return to Havana.
I don't ambition power, money, nothing, only to serve my country.
On February 16, 1959, Castro was sworn in as Prime Minister of Cuba. Castro then initiated several radical policies. In addition to land reforms and the nationalization of American businesses and private plantations, he also strengthened ties with the Soviet Union. These actions eventually compelled the U.S. to end diplomatic relations and to impose a trade embargo against Cuba.
There is a limit to what the United States in self-respect can endure. That limit has now been reached.
In 1961, the United States unsuccessfully attempted to remove Castro from power with the Bay of Pigs invasion. That same year, Castro pronounced his Marxist-Leninist beliefs and announced Cuba would implement communist policies. 1962's Cuban Missile Crisis almost resulted in nuclear war.
It shall be the policy of this nation to regard any nuclear missile launched from Cuba against any nation in the Western Hemisphere as an attack by the Soviet Union on the United States, requiring a full retaliatory response upon the Soviet Union.
To resolve the situation, the U.S. promised to avoid future Cuban invasions and to withdraw its missiles from Turkey if the USSR removed its weapons from Cuba. Despite this agreement, the CIA attempted to assassinate Castro multiple times throughout his leadership. Over the next years, Castro took control of Cuba's Communist Party and promoted anti-imperialism and revolutionary action in various Latin American nations. Despite providing benefits like free healthcare and education, Castro's regime repressed opposition of his one-party rule and limited civil liberties. In 1976, Castro became president of Cuba's Council of State. Throughout the next decade, he championed the communist cause by sending troops to assorted Third World conflicts. However, Cuba lost a major source of funding in 1991 after the Soviet Union's collapse. Castro tried to limit the economic impact by relaxing restrictions, promoting tourism, and encouraging outside investment. He even legalized the US dollar. In the aftermath of 2001's Hurricane Michelle, Castro accepted United States aid. Nevertheless, Cubans continued showing their dissatisfaction with Castro's regime by protesting or leaving the country. Soon after, Castro's health deteriorated. He stepped down as president in 2008 and resigned as Secretary General of the Communist Party in 2011. His brother Raúl replaced him in both roles. Some call him a dictator and an abuser of human rights, while others label him a socialist icon who champions the poor. Either way, Fidel Castro was one of the most controversial leaders in Latin American history.